It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, May 31st, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful Tuesday? We've got current news from around the world, looking into the book of Jeremiah, and we have thoughts of the week on providence and media. All right, everyone, how are you doing today? It is Tuesday, and yes, Tuesday is a good day. Well, I'm trying to think of why it's a good day, because it's the first day after Monday. And we know Monday is sometimes a hard day for everyone, so it's a good day because it's the first day after Monday. Yeah, guys, you know that there's no denying I just made that up in my head right now. So how are you guys enjoying your week? I'm super thankful for all of you guys joining us here on the Morning Star Drive. So I really hope that you guys keep liking and commenting. Want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. And of course, more than anything else, we're going to build this English community. And I hope that this could be a place where a lot of us can just speak up, say the things we want to, request, tell testimonies and stories. I really, really enjoy all this anyways. So everyone, thank you for joining us here today. Today's Thoughts of the Week is pretty interesting because it has to do with a comment I talked about yesterday. Someone commented me on Patreon about the song of choice for the day, and I'm getting a lot of different comments of what people think about this worldly song that's being played, and a lot of good things out there. I'm really thankful for your input, both on SoundCloud and YouTube, but we'll talk a little bit more deeply about that also, okay? So, thank you so much for commenting, all the people that are commenting. There's more comments coming in. People are DMing me also, but I am just grateful and thankful that everyone is participating, and that's kind of a cool thing for me. It makes me feel like I'm not talking into space, right? It makes me feel like I'm actually talking, or the podcast is actually reaching out to people, and it's not just like me doing my personal project where 0 people are listening and I'm just kind of by myself, like with crickets in the background. But yeah. Super grateful and thankful. I will talk about that for the thoughts of the week. Wow, this week it's been quite interesting for the, just kind of getting ourselves into that mindset of perfect prayer. Like, it's really interesting because even for me, I noticed that if you don't focus for that one moment, you just all of a sudden start thinking about other stuff during prayer. I'm going to be honest with you, even right before I started my podcast today, I always pray and say, oh, God, please bless me. And I would pause for a moment and I wouldn't be that focused at that moment. And I'd have these thoughts, or I'd have these visions in my head of things that were happening. And I would get back to wow, you only need to fall off your focus for a moment, just for a moment, and just for that moment, and it's already you're in a different place. And I'm thinking about other things I had to repent, oh God, I'm so sorry. Wow, it's that quick that your thoughts can go somewhere else and you can get distracted. So I hope that we are really, really focused on the perfect prayer. And this perfect prayer is something that all of us, just listening to the top 10 things that Sunsteam talked about this week for perfect prayer, it is achievable. It's not something that's not achievable. I think that we can kind of look at it as when you're trying the perfect prayer, don't try to do an hour of perfect prayer, but really step forward and say, you know what, I'm going to go 10 minutes of perfect prayer, just absolute concentration and just focused on what I want to pray about. And I think that would help you a lot more. And I used to do this in the past when I was doing a 3-hour prayer. During the 3-hour prayer, I'd put a timer on for 20 minutes at a time. And every 20 minutes, it would, I'd be praying, and it would help me from dozing off, or help me from getting distracted. That the alarm would go off every 20 minutes, oh yeah, that's right. And it would pull me back into the right space. So I hope it's something that can help you guys out too when it comes to you guys praying also. We have a new talk on Thursday for Espresso with Sky, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, I haven't made the video yet. It's already Monday. Haven't made it yet. My editing team is probably freaking out like, what are you doing? You've got to make it soon. So I will be making it. You know what? I'm going to make up my mind to make it today. I'm going to make up my mind for that. Yeah, I got to do it. I got to do it, right? So I'm thinking about a lot of different topics. Well, there's a ton of different topics in my head right now and things that people are thinking about. But yeah, I got to make that new video. And there's a lot of questions that come up on my YouTube channel too in comments. So I'm really, really thankful for that also. Okay. This week's Sunday edition, we met Shanice Go from Malaysia, who's Karyan's sister. And I hope that you guys really enjoy it. A lot of people already watching this one, learning about her journey into this history, how much grace she's received. Really fun, insightful interview too, and hope you guys really enjoy it. So make sure to check out this week's Sunday edition with Shanice Go. All right. So let's get this show started with member artists from around the world. Who is a featured artist of the day on this amazing Tuesday? It is going to be Jew star Aiden Verity from New Zealand with their latest single that just dropped 2 weeks ago. This song is called Busy Bee, and I think many people are going to relate to this song because, she did talk about a lot of times, you're in prayer, or a lot of times, we're doing these conditions, but you just don't feel like, those moments you don't feel like you're worthy, or you don't feel like, oh, am I really doing this properly? Or you think that everyone else is praying even better than you are, kind of thing, and you kind of feel down. But this is a great song, and I hope you guys will really enjoy this. That second song is from Zeniac from the Paper Music Associates in Korea with Star Launcher. And last but not least, we have Renee Lai from Taiwan with her original song, her first original song. That song is called I See.
The Babylon bee is too busy to cry, buzzing away, looking for a flower to duck and hide, a worker or a queen. Sometimes I feel like it's the same thing, a princess asleep on a pea, put off by the smallest of sufferings, but I'm still working on me. If I'm honest, I feel so strange, a fish without water, a cranium without a brain, looking so good for the cameras, but feeling so very average. Where else can I go? There's only one river where living water flows. I already know the answer, the problem is throwing my own rope. When I'm in the water and on the boat, both the following sheep and also the goat. I'm in the water and on the boat, both the following sheep and also the goat. If I'm honest, I like routine, like to go swimming and slip in cups of tea, like seeing blanks on my schedule and filling them with my own woes. Now I'm overthrown and all around me are the people who can't do wrong. I smile and try to let it go. The problem is giving myself hope. To find a mountain where I can scream. I need a place to do my own thing. I need a cave where I can sing and it's funny. There's no one to judge me and I can try this way or that. I don't have to worry about falling flat. But there's work to do. Is this even work too? Who can decide? Is it me? Is it you? Is it God? How far would I go if I could? I go far slower than I should. I'm only as good as how much I produce. Squeeze on my brain and pour out the juice. As much as I grind my nose in the ground, but nobody knows, they don't notice I'm down. I haven't been busy enough. I'm floating too far, too far. I'm in the water and on the boat, both the following sheep and also the goat. I'm in the water and on the boat, both the following sheep and also the goat. Eyes are looking over my shoulder. There's all many stars, God's colder. Eyes are over my shoulder, there's all my next step. buzzing away, looking for a flower to duck and hide, a worker or a queen. Sometimes I feel like it's the same thing, a princess asleep on a pea, poured off by the swells of sufferings, but I'm still working on me.
Should be unknown omega star appeared along the axis of space and time. Welcome back and stay for a new language of eternity. On a golden mega structure built, you put all the words, let there be light, in a moment of a celestial miracle. Stars were fired from the temple you missed for so long. Collisions occur greatly from now on. Get ready for a rendezvous. I see the blue shifted light from you in a moment of a celestial miracle. Do you recognize me? You've waited for me. I'm right here. I remember you calling my name, calling for me to say nice, to see again. The day has come at last. It is not a dream. A decade could never make you old. So take off and fly through the sky with the golden fractals. Oh, it's revelation. We will synchronize with those who prayed for us. We know your love's always the same. Time for us to cry out. We're right here for you.我看见主的模样 So alive, so alive 我听见主的声音 So clear, so clear 他的爱融化我心，使我灵魂安然平静，
神迹，多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽全心，持守我对天地约定。我看见理智前进着 So alive, so alive。 我听见话语满溢着 So clear, so clear。 主的爱始终如一，不曾改变，使我能完全沉浸主话语，确实不必，使我能体会神爱的旨意。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽全心，持守我对天地约定。属天的路我越走越确信，感谢圣灵强烈引导我心灵，当代有主同在包围世纪，我会怀抱感谢忠诚世间到底，主啊我爱你。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽全心，持守我对天地约定。多幸运，在新时代里与主一起经历风雨，一生用尽全心，持守我对天地约定。我看见主的模样 So alive, so alive。
And that was Renee live from Taiwan with I See. Before that was Zeniac from PMA in Korea with Star Launcher. And of course, the feature artist of the day today was Justar Aiden Verdi from New Zealand with Busy Bee. All right, so let us get into some news going on around the world. And of course, what are the three reasons? Just like Sunseam says, number one, see what God is doing. Number two, see the things that we need to report and pray to God about. And last but not least, what are the things we can comfort God's heart in? All right, so let's start off with what is going on in the Russia and the Ukraine. What have we missed over the last 24 hours? And it seems like the European Union leaders are struggling to resolve their differences over a proposed ban on Russian oil imports, with Hungary opposing the move. So the EU chief, Ursula von der Leyen, she basically says we're not there yet as she arrives for a two-day leader summit in Brussels. The European Commission are to blame for a lack of progress on Russian oil sanctions. Hungarian PM Viktor Orban has told reporters at a European Council summit in Brussels. And Orban also said he would only agree to the European Union's latest proposals for sanctions against Russia if solutions are found to guarantee his country's energy supply first. And I think that sounds reasonable, right? You can't just ban everything and have nothing in place. So his country is gonna, be stuck without any energy supplies, right? So I think that's something that we have to take into consideration. It's not so simple, from the layman's point of view. It's just like, just ban it. It's so bad. But honestly, what if you ban it and you have nothing to, nothing to take over the energy supply that's gonna disappear, right? So, yes, he does need guarantees that his country could purchase oil by sea if Russian shipments stop, right? And I think that's a reasonable request from any world leader. Also, the U.S. appears close to sending a long-range multiple rocket system to Ukraine, but Joe Biden does say that these missiles are not long-range missiles. They're not long enough to strike into Russia, and I think that's an important thing that Joe Biden does have to take into consideration. Fighting in the Ukrainian city of Severodonetsk is very fierce, and the situation is very difficult, the regional governor is saying. We'll talk a little bit more about that later too, but Russian troops are advancing after entering the outskirts of the key eastern city in Luhansk, according to Serhiy Haidai. But the evacuation is suspended after French journalist Frederic Leclerc Imhoff is killed. So President Emmanuel Macron says he was there to show the reality of the war. And Moscow says its top priority is eventually to take all of the Donbass, a former industrial region made up of Luhansk and another area called Donetsk. So Russian troops are entering Severodonetsk, and this was reported earlier. I just talked about this just a few moments ago. Russian forces had advanced into the center of Severodonetsk, where fighting has raged for days. So now the besieged city's district administration head, which sits in Luhansk, has given more details. A Ukrainian news website quoted Roman Vlasenko as telling Radio Liberty's Ukrainian service. Now, the enemy was able to enter from two directions. Now, remember, this is coming from the Ukraine, and the radio show said the enemy was able to enter from two directions, Novaidar and Starobilsk, and it is controlling a strip of around 100 meters, and they could not advance much deeper because our army was holding the line. So we'll see what's going to happen here. It's quite interesting how this is going to develop. But if, we're already, because of the pandemic, in this crazy, inflation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that too a little bit later. But, economies are just plummeting. But on top of that, because of this war, you see food scarcity all over the world. So what is going to happen? We got to pray about it, right? So that is kind of what's happening over there in Russia and the Ukraine. In other news, I talked about this yesterday too, about the Flag Day, right, in Israel. And far-right Israeli attacks highlight Jerusalem Day reality. So ultra-nationalist Israelis violently confronted Palestinians both during and after the flag march on Sunday. Jerusalem Day and its accompanying flag march came and went in occupied East Jerusalem's Old City, but despite Israeli authorities breathing a sigh of relief that it did not trigger wider confrontations between Israel and the Palestinians, particularly Hamas in Gaza, the reality was a day of violence in which ultra-nationalist Jewish Israelis attacked countless Palestinians, many times under the eyes of Israeli police. At least 81 Palestinians were wounded on Sunday by Israeli forces and far-right Jews in Jerusalem during and after the flag march, which marked the day Israel illegally occupied and annexed the city's eastern half in 1967. Of course, we're looking at from one point of view, and most Jewish Israelis view it as the day Jerusalem was unified. Now, the Palestinian Red Crescent told Al Jazeera that injuries during the day-long rally had been caused by rubber-coated bullets, beatings, pepper spray, and one case of live ammunition, and at least 28 Palestinians were transferred to hospital for treatment. And I'm going to just say this, I am very grateful and thankful that no one was killed, right? Israeli police said that 5 of its officers were lightly injured. During this annual march, 70,000 Israelis participated, which has been described as a racist and fascist rally in and around the Old City of Jerusalem, and specifically passed through the Muslim quarter where shops were largely shuttered in preparation. Now, the march included the waving of Israeli flags and the singing of nationalistic songs, as well as the chanting of slogans such as "Death to Arabs" and "May your villages burn down," including in the Old City's Muslim quarter. Now, during the march, far-right Jews were witnessed assaulting Palestinian residents. And I think it's very good that they said there were far-right Jews, right? So it's not like the majority, right? There's just this group of people, far-right Jews, were witnessed assaulting Palestinian residents as well as medics and local and international journalists. So the march was set to end at approximately 9 p.m. local time, but attacks persisted late into the evening. And following the rally, large groups of ultra-nationalist Israelis rampaged through Palestinian neighborhoods in East Jerusalem and assaulted residents and their property. And just going to let you know, the rhetoric of this article is from the Middle East. It's Al Jazeera, so it's going to be pro-Palestinian side. So that's why it sounds a little, I didn't want to pick it too much, but this is the only place I found like more information on it. But yeah, most of the attacks on Sunday took place inside the old city, including the area of the Moroccan Gate next to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, as well as Bab al-Zahira, which is Herod's Gate, and Damascus Gate. Jewish marchers also poured into Salah al-Din Street, the main Palestinian commercial thoroughfare near the old city, as well as the neighborhoods of Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan, and carried out assaults. Now, Israel did pass a law in 1980 formally declaring both the eastern and western parts of the city as its eternal undivided capital. The vast majority of the international community considers East Jerusalem occupied territory over which Israel has no legal sovereignty, right? So when you look at what's going on, even with this Jerusalem, and we see the abomination that causes desolation, their temple was destroyed, and now it's like being fought over between the Jews and the Muslims. Like, this is something we see as a direct result of not, when we look at the scriptures, of not receiving the Messiah. Right? And we see that they have never been in peace, and it's always been in this type of situation. So, man, it's so crazy when you look at historically from the biblical point of view, like from the New Testament and from like the Christian point of view and from Providence point of view, what is happening, like spiritually, because of what they've done, right? So I think it's something that we have to, when we look at the news, we have to kind of be in awe. Like, this is God said this was going to happen, and it's been 2,000 years, and it hasn't stopped. There hasn't been peace. And we have to think about this, is if they accepted Christ, then there would have been peace for forever and ever. But, it's for me, when you look at historically, it is really crazy and amazing that that's actually happening, right? So, that is, what happened in Jerusalem over there on Sunday. Last but not least, we're going to go into Germany. And Germany, inflation hitting another all-time high in May. We've talked about inflation in the UK and in the US and Canada. But here's Germany, which is like the strongest economy in the European Union, in all of Europe. And they hit an all-time high. So consumer prices in the continent's biggest economy jumped 8.7% from a year ago in May. German inflation hit another all-time high, adding urgency to the European Central Bank's exit from crisis-era stimulus after numbers from Spain also topped economists' estimates. Driven by soaring energy and food costs, data released Monday showed consumer prices in the continent's biggest economy jumped 8.7% from a year ago in May. And analysts surveyed by Bloomberg predicted an 8.1% advance, so this is 0.6% higher. It's pretty bad, right? The report comes just 10 days before a crucial ECB meeting where officials are set to announce the conclusion of large-scale asset purchases and confirm plans to raise interest rates in July for the first time in more than a decade. Some policymakers have even floated the idea of a half-point hike rather than the quarter point most of them support. The inflation figures increase pressure on the government as households are further squeezed. Finance Minister Christian Lindner earlier Monday called the fight against surging prices a top priority while advocating an end to expansive fiscal policy. Other news in Germany, Germany, as they're trying to get rid of their imports from Russian oil and gas, they have signed an energy partnership agreement with Qatar. So the deal will see Doha and Berlin focus on developing trade relations in liquefied natural gas, among other energy sources. Qatar and Germany have signed a declaration to deepen their energy partnership with a focus on trade in hydrogen and liquefied natural gas, LNG, as Europe's biggest economy looks for alternative supplies amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, the deal reached on Friday foresees regular meetings between authorities from both countries and creates a working group focused on developing trade relations in LNG and hydrogen, as well as a working group devoted to renewable energy. Russia is currently the largest supplier of gas to Germany, and Berlin has launched several initiatives to lessen its energy dependence on Moscow since it launched its offensive against Ukraine in late February. And if you want to know about natural gas exports, Russia is number one in the world in natural gas gas exports. It's Russia, US, and then Qatar, and then everyone else kind of floats a lot below that. But Russia's number one in the world. So if people start banning them, that is the number one supplier in LNG, right? This liquefied natural gas. So it is a lot that people need to, substitute, and it's not going to be easy just to get rid of the number one supplier, the number one exporter of natural gas in the world. All right. So that is the news going on around the world. Hopefully there's some things we can pray about. As long as we don't pray about gas is going to keep getting higher and higher. That's just reality. It's just going to get higher and higher. So I hope that we'll really realize what that means. Okay. And prices, if the number one economies in the world, like number one economy in the world is the US, and they are up like 7 point something percent. China's number 2, and you have Japan number 3, and then you're going to have other countries like Germany, the UK, Canada. If they're all in crazy inflation, and the inflation is much, much higher than the wage, right? The wage is increasing, is not as high. So that means the buying power of everyone's money is going down more and more. And this is why everyone's suffering even more than the just 8.7%, right? We're suffering even more because our wages are not catching up with the inflation that's happening, and the cost of goods is going up higher than the wages are. So our buying power is getting lower and lower and lower. Okay, so that is something that we can pray about also. All right, so that is the top news going on around the world, which means we're going to get into some sporting news. What are the top 3 news in sports going on right now? NBA playoffs. It was Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Boston versus Miami. Winner goes on to play the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals. And what a great game. I thought Boston was just killing them. They were up over 10 points, 17 points at one point. And then when it came to the last minute, it was like a 2-point game. Miami's going down with like just I think like less than 20 seconds left. Jimmy Butler shoots a 3 to go for the lead. He misses it. And Boston eventually wins 100-96. They are going to the NBA Finals. Jason Tatum wins the Larry Bird MVP award for the MVP of the Eastern Conference. 26 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists in that final Game 7. Jimmy Butler, 35 points, 9 assists, 9 rebounds, and he had 35 points, 9 rebounds, and he played he played 48 minutes, which is crazy, right? Played 48 minutes. So quite amazing feat for him. I know that Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum both played 45 minutes each, so they only missed 30 minutes of the game. So that's incredible, but it's going to be a crazy matchup. 2 teams with great defenses. Golden State Warriors. For myself, I think Golden State's going to win in 7 games, and Steph Curry is going to be the MVP. That's just what I think. But deep in the back of my head, I actually think it's going to be a wipeout. Like, I think it's going to actually be 4-1 for Golden State. That's just what it feels like in my head. But, I do think that Golden State's going to win win the NBA Finals. So that is the NBA news. We'll go into ice hockey, but it is not NHL playoffs because there wasn't a game yesterday. It's going to be the IIHF World Championships. It's the final gold medal match. It is Canada versus Finland, which is 3 years in a row, right? So in Finland, they played, and Finland won. 2020 was canceled. 2021, Canada beats Finland, and once again, 2022, it went to overtime. It was a crazy game. It really was, and it went to overtime, and Finland scores a game winner, and Finland wins the gold medal for the World Championships. Just one thing you guys need to know is there's no NHL players in this one. They're all like college players and people who are drafted and stuff, so it's a little bit different. So that's why people don't really look at it as much as the other games. And in tennis news, great. We got an awesome matchup coming up over there in French Open on the clay courts, Roland Garros, and 2 familiar faces in the quarterfinals. It's going to be Rafael Nadal, just the other day, defeats Felix Auger-Aliassime, who is Canadian. It took 4.5-hour match. And Nadal ends up on top. Guess who's playing in the quarterfinals? He's playing Novak Djokovic. This is their 59th meeting. 59th meeting, right? These two have had this matchup more than any other matchup in history. Djokovic leads at 30-28, but when it comes to the French Open, Nadal has the edge, and he's 7 wins and 2 losses. That's where Nadal was the master, on the clay courts. He has 13 French Open championships. Djokovic only has 2. right? And when it comes to most Grand Slam championships, Nadal has 21, Djokovic has 20. And so it's basically, if Nadal can win this French Open, he'll be 2 championships ahead of Djokovic and Federer. And if Djokovic wins, he'll be tied with Nadal. So quite interesting to see what's going to happen here. Everyone's looking forward to seeing that matchup. Honestly, I think Djokovic is a stronger player, but Nadal is the best on clay courts. You know what Nadal's record is on the clay courts? It's ridiculous how good his win-loss record is. His win-loss record in the French Open is 109 wins with only 3 losses. That's how good he is on clay courts. So even though Djokovic is a better player right now on clay, it's hard to say that it's going to be like an easy one for Djokovic. All right, so there it is. That is the end. That is the end of sports and world news. And that means what are we doing, guys? We are getting into the golden time. Yes, it's the golden time where angels are watching from the heavens as we give praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. We're going to start off with a very good song, one of my favorites. It's The Lord is My Hope and Joy. And then Let's Run Before the Rain Pours. And then we'll end things off with the meaning of Thanksgiving. So as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
Life without the Lord, how could we live? No one could live like that. Without fun, without hope, oh, what kind of life is that? Since the Lord is my hope and joy, I'll always follow. The Lord is my pride. He's the source of my confidence. Tell someone, tell them of my Lord, boast about him to everyone I see. I'll tell them all those stories of his life, endless stories about him. Anyone who hears me will be completely blown away. Because
ocean. While watching as I ran, God smiled at me and clapped. Then the Holy Spirit said, follow me. Come on, let us run before the rain starts to pour. You must get it done. It's the opportunity, she said to me. The moment the Spirit inspired me, she made me realize and looking good. She once again guided my every step. I have no doubts, nothing to verify. I'm absolutely certain. Mighty God, Holy Spirit, we are now hurrying on our way, happily and so full of joy. The Holy Spirit is right next to us, serving her diligently. We go on our way. 안녕,
Who saved me from certain death and gave me eternal life. Oh, how can it be? You who created everything, all the heavens and the earth, made it all for me. You are worthy to receive glory, praise, and endless thanks, my almighty King. You said that showing gratitude goes far beyond saying thank you. It's to glorify in a greater way. So now I know the meaning of thanksgiving, and now I know the reason why you saved me. It's to give all my love, my body, heart, and thoughts to you only as your bride each day. I have all I could ever want and all I will ever need, oh, and so much more. I would offer all my wealth, but your love, it has a price no one can afford. You said that showing gratitude goes far beyond saying thank you. It's to glorify in a greater way. So now I know the meaning of thanksgiving, of thanksgiving. And now I found my purpose, my true calling. So now I know the meaning of thanksgiving. And now I know the reason why you saved me. It's to give all my love, my body, heart, and thoughts to you only as your bride each day. My God, I will live for you and you alone as your bride for eternity.
And yes, that is The Meaning of Thanksgiving. What a great song. You know what? I don't think I've heard that song very much. But when I listen to it here, it's really good. I really enjoy that song, The Meaning of Thanksgiving. Before that, Let's Run Before the Rain Pours. And of course, The Lord is My Joy and Hope, or Hope and Joy. And I'm really hoping that all of you guys here are enjoying the time of praise and worship. Just kind of center your thoughts and your mind on God before we get into the word study. And of course, it is Tuesday, right? So every single Tuesday, what is happening, of course, when it comes to the word study, it's all about the scriptures, going into the Bible, historical backgrounds, political backgrounds, whatever all these things are. And I hope you guys will really, really enjoy this more than anything else, okay? So let's get into it. This week, there's a lot of different scriptures, but I really wanted to go over the book of Jeremiah. And Jeremiah, he's one of the major prophets. He's probably one of the top, he's considered only of four major prophets. I believe it's like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. Like those four are the big ones, right? And these are the ones that we read about a lot. And they're only major prophets because they have really big Bibles, but they're considered like the four major or important prophets, right? The big ones, the big four. There's the big four in the beginning, before the split, and there's a big four after. Like before, who is it? It's supposed to be like Elijah, Moses. You know what? I'm gonna have to review my mind on this one. But the big four we have right now is Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. And we're gonna go do a kind of an overview of the book of Jeremiah. So let's get into the book of Jeremiah. Okay, so the book of Jeremiah was written by the prophet whose name the book bears, obviously. It is by Jeremiah, priest from the village of Anathoth in Benjamin, just a few miles northeast of Jerusalem. Now, Jeremiah's prophecies were written down by Baruch, who is his scribe. Right, Baruch is the scribe of Jeremiah. And perhaps chapter 52 was written by Baruch after Jeremiah's death, maybe, possibly, but at Jeremiah's previous direction. So here is the interesting part about the life of Jeremiah. More is known of the life of Jeremiah than any other literary prophet in the Bible. He began prophesying in the 13th year of the reign of King Josiah, which is, we like that story, when Jeremiah was but a youth. And Jeremiah was a reluctant prophet, but felt compelled to speak God's word. And he prophesied until after Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC. So if you take that number, it's from 627 to 586. So that's like 50-something years. When you think about that, 50 years, right? So, and his ministry lasted a total, so 50 years, I think it's a little bit over 50. Well, think about that, 627. 586. So how many years is that? You'd have to minus 27 to get to 600. 27 plus 24, 51 years. It'd be 51 years. Josiah's great religious reformation came in the early part of Jeremiah's work, but the reforms did not reach the hearts of the people, for they were still rebellious at that time, right? And the Jews opposed Jeremiah and his work from the very outset. First, the citizens of his native Anathoth tried to stop his work and even attempted to kill him, right? Even his kinsmen opposed him. Jeremiah later moved to Jerusalem, but he endured inveterate opposition there also. And when King Josiah died, Jeremiah lamented his death. Jeremiah prophesied against Josiah's wicked successors, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, and Jeconiah. right? And in the very year Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem, Jeremiah announced both his coming and the 70-year captivity of the Jews. Now, under the rule of Jehoiakim, Jeremiah preached a great sermon in the temple in Jerusalem, and after this, the princes, prophets, and priests of Judah called for his death. However, Jeremiah was delivered at that time. Now, at the Lord's direction, Jeremiah dictated his prophecies to Baruch, who wrote them on a scroll. However, when King Jehoiakim read the scroll, he was so angry, he cut it with the scribe's knife and threw it into the fire. The king commanded that Jeremiah and Baruch be seized, but the Lord hid them. Jeremiah dictated the prophecies to Baruch again and added others. Jeremiah urged King Zedekiah to be faithful to Nebuchadnezzar, but Zedekiah refused, and the Babylonians besieged Jerusalem, and great suffering resulted. Later, Jeremiah was accused of trying to defect to the enemy and was placed in prison, and subsequently the king transferred him from the dungeon to the court of the prison and gave him a daily ration of bread. Guys, this sounds like when you think of Jeremiah, you don't think about all this stuff that he was going through. He went through so much. He's going as a traitor, someone who betrays the country. People wanted to kill him. Like, even this is sounding like Sunseem's life here too, right? When Jeremiah again prophesied against Jerusalem, the king turned him over to the princes, who threw him into a dungeon, the bottom of which was filled with mud, into which Jeremiah sank. Jeremiah would have died there had he not been rescued by Ebed-Melech, an Ethiopian eunuch of the king's house. Now, when Nebuchadnezzar took Jerusalem, he let Jeremiah go free to his own home. A mutinous band of Jews murdered Gedaliah, who had been appointed governor by Nebuchadnezzar, and they decided to flee to Egypt for safety, taking Jeremiah with them as a hostage. They took Jeremiah to Tahpanhes in Egypt, where he continued to prophesy against them. The life of Jeremiah was one of sorrow upon sorrow. And that's why they call him like the prophet of tears. His people whom he loved and with whom he pleaded unceasingly for 50 years continually refused to hear him, rewarded his labor with rejection and persecution, and eventually perished as the result. His life is well summarized in his own melancholy lament. This is in Jeremiah chapter 8 and 9. This is his own lament. It says, "I would comfort myself in sorrow. My heart is faint in me. Listen, the voice, the cry of the daughter of my people from a far country. Is not the Lord in Zion? Is not her king in her? Why have they provoked me to anger with their carved images and with foreign idols? The harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. For the hurt of the daughter of my people I am hurt. I am mourning. Astonishment has taken hold of me. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then is there no recovery for the health of the daughter of my people? Oh, that my head were waters and my eyes a fountain of tears, that I might weep day and night for the slain of the daughter of my people. Oh, that I had in the wilderness a lodging place for wayfaring men, that I might leave my people and go from them, for they are all adulterers, an assembly of treacherous men." Right? And this is him, the weeping prophet. So when you listen to that, man, his life was just terrible. Like, preaching the words of God, he was reluctant to do it, but who wouldn't be in that situation, right? If you think about it, who wouldn't be in that? That's just ridiculous what the people did to him. But it's kind of that same theme all the time, right? The same theme of, God's own people going against him. All right. So that is kind of like the life that Jeremiah was living. And the only other thing I want to talk about right now is the historical and political background of Jeremiah's world. Where was he living? Right. And of course, it's, he's this terrible world of politics he's into, right? And so a lot of people would ask, like, well, is God really into politics? And technically, yeah. Like, even the prophet Habakkuk tells us of God's hand behind the Chaldean invasion into Judah. Isaiah tells us of the Persian ruler Cyrus, who's to carry out God's plan for Israel's return from exile. So look at what is happening in the Middle East even right now. It's not merely a battle between dissatisfied groups or progressives or fanatics, like sorting out the nations in that part of the world. And we're listening to it right now with the Palestinians and the Israelis, right? It's all taking place under the watchful eye of God. And as much as it was in the times of Jeremiah, right, only then the prophet spelled out specific reasons, right? So world history is still very much God's history. And he's shaping the world for the ultimate coming of, this time that we're living in right now. So the book of Jeremiah is a book of our times, but it takes great wisdom for us to understand it and to be able to preach it really well, right? So just as in Jeremiah's time, a covenant-governed nation of God's people was becoming engrossed in the world around her. So a Christian-impacted society, even right now, Providence-impacted society, look at Providence. Are we turning away from the gospel? Are we turning away from the Providence gospel because of the environment and the world that we're being sunken into? Right? So this is kind of like that situation there. And we kind of observe this even with Christianity, right? Or the Christian West that is very into the worldly culture too, right? So it's Jeremiah, the man of God, who is wrestling as a weeping prophet to speak out to a people who have the scriptures, who have the Bible, but 6 centuries later, we see that Jesus, Son of God, weeping over Jerusalem in the same way. So in the historical background, we consider of course, it's about the people of God. So what was the world that they were living in? So Jeremiah lived in a world that saw major shifts in political power during his lifetime. When the prophet was born, the great superpower of the day was Assyria. Okay, and we see the impact of this already in the days of King Hezekiah, and it was Assyria that carried the northern kingdom into exile, and that's in 722 BC. Okay, so before the final defeat of Samaria, Syria had been a constant thorn in the side of the northern kingdom of Israel, and further afield, other nations began to awake and spread their wings. Some eventually affected the land of Israel, but many stayed quite a distance away. But before the fall of Samaria, the city of Rome was built in 753 BC, and very gradually Rome began to expand westward, eastward, northward, and southward. The Roman Empire came into being slowly, but its excellent road systems were not only serving their armies, but the propagating of the gospel as well. So that's something that's a benefit of these excellent roads that were being built. Also on the western side, the Greeks began to assert themselves, and their impact came through Hellenization, right? That's the spreading of like Greek culture, Greek language and customs. And this has been happening over many centuries. That first started with, and became really, really big later on with Alexander the Great, right? And ultimately paving the way for the spreading of the gospel too, because everything was in Greek. Alexander the Great, he's the one who starts the impact, but he didn't even come into the scene until 338 BC, but you see that it was up and coming already at the time of Jeremiah. So closer to Jeremiah's time was the invasion of the Scythians from the Russian steppes in the north, and they pushed their way into the Middle East, but did not affect Israel and Judah. From the eastern frontiers, the Medes began to make their presence felt, ultimately blending with the Persians. The Persians, in turn, conquered the rich Lydian Empire in present-day Turkey, which made them eventually rub shoulders with the Greeks. And this gives us a glimpse of historical developments which are going to affect the spread of the gospel later on. So one more area of interest, though, that we should think about, even though it didn't affect the spread of the gospel in the earliest centuries, was China. So beyond the Parthian and Median empires to the east lay the vast Chinese empire, and at that time under the Zhou dynasty. So Jewish exiles had already settled there not long after the time of Daniel, and they were known by the Chinese as the people who don't eat the sinew of the hip, right? And that was also the time of the well-known philosopher Confucius, right? So this is quite interesting that the Jews went all the way up to China too. So eventually the gospel reached China around 630 AD from Syria via the Silk Road. And this is kind of a broad picture of the political and historical scene where Jeremiah is coming from. And it helps us see the Middle East in its bigger context. Okay, so let's take a look at more specifically the historical and political context at Jeremiah's time. Okay, we'll look specifically at this time. So shortly after the time of the godly king Josiah, and we know him, right? The Assyrian armies were defeated, and they were initially aided by armies from the African bloc, like Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, under Pharaoh Necho. Now, on the eastern side, the Babylonian armies and those of the Medes attacked, and great Nineveh fell, just as the prophet Nahum had predicted, and this was in 605 BC at the Battle of Carchemish, which we know too. Then the battles were drawn between Babylonia and Egypt and its confederates. Egypt was pushed back to its home territory and defeated, and the Babylonian troops under Nebuchadnezzar began their big triumph through the Middle East, and we notice that Israel, Judah was kind of a buffer state between the big powers. Now, the smaller nations surrounding Judah were all subdued, right? Like Edom, Moab, Ammon, and others, right? And there were a number of deportations from Judah and Jerusalem during Jeremiah's time. The first in 605 BC included Daniel and others of nobility, and we know that story, and they were to be re-educated to serve at the Babylonian court. A second group that went out about 8 years later included Ezekiel and others of some standing. And they included craftsmen and others who were to settle in the Chebar region in a place called Tel Abib. Jeremiah writes to them and tells them to settle down in their community among the Babylonians and to seek the shalom of the cities where they were settled. The third group of exiles came to Babylon after the destruction of Jerusalem, which is around 586 BC. So where's that? You're looking at roughly 10 years later, and they were the leftover population, including some royals, soldiers, and common folk. And there was actually a fourth group of exiles too, a group of Jerusalem dwellers and others left behind by Nebuchadnezzar, who escaped into Egypt and took Jeremiah along against his will. Now, in chapter 25 of Jeremiah, in chapter 25 of the prophecy, Jeremiah is told by the Lord that the exile would last 70 years, and it is clear that these years started as from the first group of exiles. Now, this term of punishment was for Judah's failure to serve and honor the Lord, but also Israel's enemies were going to receive punishments too. In fact, all of chapter 25 shows Jeremiah and us that we are to keep our eyes on the real or primary cause of history. The Lord is working out his plans. The secondary causes are the world powers vying for top positions. So God, when we have to understand this, when you see what's going on in the background, God is the Lord of all history. Even the nations are his servants. So God is dealing with his people Israel, and the nations are his rod, right? And this is kind of a principle that you got to keep in mind today too, right? That, God was using Necho. God was using Assyria. God was using Cyrus of Persia, right? So, and if we don't remember that, that's actually happening today too. It's just that we don't see it in real time, but we're going to get that, that when Sunsim writes about this, we're going to hear all about this. Remember the time when it was George W. Bush going into Iraq for Saddam Hussein? Sunsim said that he was there as God's rod to go punish Saddam Hussein, right? And he basically took it too far, but he was originally used as that purpose, right? The last part of Jeremiah 25 hints at the culminating battle at the end of history and makes us aware of the great day of the Lord, which is to come, okay? And Babylon, in fact, becomes a symbol of the world powers, both politically and economically. And basically in Revelation chapter 18, verse 2 basically says, fallen is Babylon the Great, which is symbolizing the great powers even today too. Okay, so we have to really understand that there was a lot of sin and things that happened, but in God's bigger plan, you see that we can't even forget that there is a saving design even in the exile. Even in their sin, there is a saving design. So in chapter 24 of Jeremiah, he relates a vision which the Lord showed him of 2 baskets of figs, one full of good figs and the other filled with bad figs. And the earlier exiles were the good figs to be preserved in Babylon. The bad figs were left behind for the final third exile. So it is very, very interesting to see the political and historical background, and I think it's very, very important for us to know also, right? So I really, really hope that this helps you guys out when you're reading the book of Jeremiah, and just to know what Jeremiah went through. It's just incredible that all of God's people have gone through this, right? All the men of mission. So I hope that we can keep that in mind also. All right, so that is it, guys. That is the end of today's word study. I hope you guys really, really enjoyed this more than anything else, and it's something that you guys can think about, especially when you're looking at the book of Jeremiah. All right, so let's get into it, into this Korean Tuesday. What's going to be the song of choice for today? And of course, we're going to talk about this a little bit after too, as more and more people are commenting about this. On this Korean Tuesday, we have very, very famous singer. And I'm going to be honest with you, I went to Korea in 2002. I came to province in 1998. I was very young. I came at 19 years old. In 2002, I went to Korea for the World Cup, and I went to visit my my cousins and my relatives. Interesting thing here is I had a total crush on this girl here. She's younger than me. She was I think she's the same age or something, but she was, I forget what it was, but she's super famous famous now because she's like, she has a company, right? She works with YG, I believe. But her name is Boa, and she was raised to be a singer. She speaks Japanese, English, and Korean, and she sings in all three languages. But this is like one of her breakout albums. Not her breakout, but she was already big. But this song is called Number One. Number One. It's a very, very cool dance song. But I'm gonna admit to you guys, yeah, I was in Providence. It was like my third year in Providence, 2002. And 2000, my third or fourth year in Providence, maybe going into my fourth, but I was still young. But I had her album. I love this song. I had a total crush on her. It sounds so stupid, but what? I'm like 22 years old, right? And, this I don't think it's bad to to admit this type of stuff. But either way. It just sounds so crazy because that's literally half my life ago. At 20, because I'm 44 now, right? That's 22. That's 22 years ago when I was half my age. It's just funny to think about this too. But everyone, today's Korean Tuesday. Please welcome. This is Boa with Number One. And yes, that is Boa with Number One. Yes, that's a dance. She was basically taken as a little child to be raised as a singer, like become an idol. And she wasn't going to be in a group. She's a soloist. But yeah, she was raised to dance, to sing, and multiple languages. She was kind of like... she was kind of like one of those like movies where you have these super soldiers that are raised from such a young age and that's all they know. But yeah, that was kind of her life, and now she's still in that industry, but she's doing like producing and stuff like that too. But yeah, I had a crush on her, but of course I don't anymore, right? Of course I don't anymore. So Holy Spirit, I want you to know I do not have a crush on her. I have a crush on you. If I have a crush on the Holy Spirit, would that also mean that I have a crush on Pastor Joan because she's a symbolic entity? Either way, so that was a song of choice for today, which leads us into today's thoughts of the week on Providence and media. And yeah, this is kind of a cool topic because a lot of people do think about this, and we are living in a world where we are surrounded by media in movies and music, entertainment and such, right? And it's something that is unavoidable. We're going to be running into it no matter what, and there's a lot of different ideas around it. Now, one of the members on Patreon did talk about this, saying that, yeah, the basic recognition of media today, right? It is a great weapon of Satan, right? And Satan uses it, right? Part of his strategy to pull people into the physical world, make them become more worldly, right? And he takes them in direction of sin. Like this world is, in one sense, governed by Satan. And media is one of his tools. And that's why sometimes it seems like we got to take this back from Satan. So, is it, and the big question comes up, is it better to just take people away from it altogether, or is it something that we need to help each other control, or like what is the best way to do this? So what I'm gonna do first is, I've got a lot of different responses all over SoundCloud, Patreon, and YouTube, and direct messaging. Like people are DMing me, right? So I have all these things, and I'm gonna read a couple of them just to give you some idea what people are thinking about it. Okay. So this is like, because I don't want to just put my thoughts, I want to listen to what everyone else is saying too. Number one, someone else wrote, I personally like the Song of Choice because sometimes I think that God may have expressed his love through those singers, even though they're not in Providence. I like Boy Band Thursday, yes, simply because I feel nostalgia, but I also can see this person's point, right, or why they brought it up. So there's the first one. So yeah, this person is more personal. There's nostalgia. Maybe God, sometimes God is going to speak through these people too, right? And I'm sure that have many of you been in that situation? Like even for myself, when I was in Providence and I was struggling for a little bit in my first 3 years, there's this one song I listened to. I just cried and I felt the Holy Spirit like embracing me. And it was a song called The Prayer by Andrea Bocelli and Celine Dion. And I would just turn it on and I just cry to it. And I just feel like the Holy Spirit coming onto me and that, like embracing me. And that was a worldly song too, right? So yeah, I do think God does work through these worldly songs also. Another person wrote, I really actually like that you play the Song of Choice at the end, because we all live in this world, even if we don't like it. And there will always be worldly music and media. There's nothing wrong with the songs you play. They're actually really good and sound amazing. We all have to check ourselves and our hearts, so if anyone feels burdened by it, they can just skip it. Right? And it's same with TV or movies. No one is forced to watch, but from someone who works in media, okay, so this person is working in the media industry, anyone can always try to see how much effort was put into a movie, check the soundtrack, videography, acting. There's a lot of effort that gets into it. Just like I said, I just watched Top Gun, which is probably one of the most, for me, it's the best movie I've seen this year. I'm not trying to advertise it, but I'm telling you, you got to go watch it. It just sounds so bad. Either way, okay. So there's someone working in the media industry, which is much different, and they get to see all the ins and outs behind it. But, and this person brings the point is, yeah, if you don't like it, you can skip it, right? Another person wrote, as a new member, I like to have it in the podcast because it's so familiar to me. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes I just can't really vibe with Provi music. And, maybe there's something that I have to address separately. But I think everybody is different, but I don't think we should shut the world out. And it can also help with connecting to newcomers or new members. And I think that's also a very good point is, it's really weird if like if you have newcomers and you know nothing of any music or movies or anything, and that's going to be, that you kind of feel Amish. Like you can't watch anything like that, and you're kind of in a different world, and it's hard to evangelize from the world if they are coming from the world. Like we have to go into it, right? So there's another good point. Another one, I don't mind if you play the song of choice. I don't mind if you play the song of choice, any music or song that are chosen not from Providence. I know they are chosen within God's standards. Thanks everyone for sending different kinds of good music with love, right? Another person who says, for that member, talking to the person from Patreon, I completely understand what they are trying to tell us, that we should promote Provi songs more than worldly songs, most especially that the new songs are just plainly awesome, right? They're just plainly awesome. But trying to completely isolate yourself from the world or what media in the world is giving, like movies or songs, might be too much. Or else, how can we build rapport from people who enjoy and come from that environment? It might dehumanize them. So, and then they said, maybe Pastor Sky, if you will talk about the movie or songs, you could talk about it a little bit and also tell what the Word of God has to tell about it, as well as just like what Pastor Joan does. So there's an interesting point there too. Someone else brought this up, is if we isolate ourselves too much, we will not get along with the world, and we dehumanize, or we kind of, it makes us feel like we're looking down on them. So imagine like you're listening to something and then people are like, oh, I don't listen to that. Oh, I don't listen to that worldly music. Oh, I don't watch movies. It's like, it feels like someone's trying to be better than you, kind of thing. Right? Because if you can ask them, oh, because I think it's from Satan, or I think it's a bad influence, it could dehumanize, or it could be no connection. The second part is quite interesting. He says, if you could talk about the movie or songs, you could talk about it a little bit and also tell what the Word of God has to tell about it as well, just as like what Pastor Joan does. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is an interesting thing because, I've been to movies with Pastor Joan. Please don't misunderstand this. I didn't go on a date with her or anything like that. It's like the whole church, the Whitestone Church would go together. We'd all go together, right? Because I remember one time we went to go watch a movie, swimming, went to a theme park, because it was after the seniors in high school just took that huge test. They wanted a break. We all went together. I think we went twice, and we also had a bonfire at the beach. It was crazy. But we all went to watch a movie together, and this is not just with the high school students. We went with the campus and stuff like that too. It was just amazing, right? Now here's the thing. What happened was this is a very interesting thing. Is what happened was people were all like talking, after the movie, because you're with Pastor Joan. People are like trying to share what they realized, like, oh, I realized this from the movie. I realized this from the movie, right? And it was getting to the point where people were struggling to figure out what to realize from the movie, right? And Pastor Jones said something very interesting. She said, you don't have to realize something from the movie. A realization is not forced. A realization happens when it happens. Like you're watching it, you feel inspired, boom, realization comes. If it comes, it comes. But if we get into this type of culture where after every time we play sports, after every time we, watch a movie, after every time we do anything, we're always saying, what'd you realize? What'd you realize? It comes to a point where people start feeling like, what's wrong with me? Because here's everyone else realizing, but I didn't realize anything. And, I felt like this before in the past too, where I had to struggle to figure out, oh my gosh, what did I realize? When I'm just trying to play sports. Just trying to play sports, right? And I can play with God myself, right? And just enjoy the time. Because sometimes sports is something you do with God. Sports is something for your fitness and health. There's multiple reasons for it. And she's like, let it be natural. If it comes, it comes. It doesn't, it doesn't. But it shouldn't be something we're always saying, what'd you realize? What'd you realize? Because, sometimes, she was even saying that sometimes she is so stressed from all her work. Watching a movie is entertainment where it takes her mind off, where she can rest her mind from all the craziness and stress for just 2 hours, relax, and then go out, right? But then what happens is, imagine you go there to rest and relax, and then everyone's like, what'd you realize? And then there's this pressure because she's Pastor Joan that she has to have this great realization, you know what I mean? So I do think if you have a realization, it's good, and if you don't, it's fine. Right? And sometimes people just need entertainment, right? Like, of course, there are some movies I wouldn't recommend for some people, because some people can handle it, some people won't, right? Like, obviously, I wouldn't recommend like very, very sexual movies, like obviously, right? And that's something that I think even a lot of people, not even people not in Providence, are just like, yeah, it's just a little bit too much, right? And then there's some movies that have little bits and pieces of it, but it's just a great story and a great movie. And when you look at it, it's like, oh, wow, that's really interesting, or you're entertained from it, right? So I do think it's something that we have to think about is, yeah, some things, I'll pick songs, some things because it reminds me of God's love. Some things I pick because of nostalgia. Some things I pick because I just really like their music and it's catchy, right? There's a lot of different things that why people are going to look into this entertainment. And I just don't want it to get to a point where people feel like they have to realize. It becomes a stressful thing that, oh no, I just watched a movie to relax, but now I gotta tell people what I realized from it. But I think the most important thing is it should be becoming a natural thing. Like, you ever talking, sometimes God, remember even Pastor Joe said to Sunseem one time, Sunseem's like, what'd you realize? And Pastor Joe says, I didn't realize anything. And then Sunseem's like, that's the realization. The realization is that you didn't realize. Right? And that's not a bad thing. You still had a realization that you didn't realize anything, right? So it's something I do think that we have to think about also in that context. There's another one talked about, my favorite is the musical Fridays. I love the most. And in fact, after you play the song, it gives me an idea what song I'm going to practice for my next performance. Then I add it to my playlist. So there's just a lot of different things that people will use when it comes to music is just a powerful art. It is very, very powerful, right? Because here's the thing. If here's the thing that I think that we should think about too is if worldly is, what about worldly music, for instance, like classical music, right? And some people would say that, God inspired Beethoven, God inspired Bach. A lot of this music comes inspired from God. It's not from, it's still considered worldly music, but some would be like, no, it was inspired by God, right? Some when we look at that is when we even look at classical music and we didn't know that what Sunseem said, would we stop listening to classical music because it's worldly music? Or would we look at that and say, well, you know what, it's good. What does it remind me of? And I do think one of the big points that people brought up was sometimes it's up to the listener. The listener doesn't want to listen to it, they should skip it. Or if they want to listen to it, they can listen to it. Can we stop people from sinning from media? And the answer is no, we actually can't. But then the next question is, should we provide it for them? And that is the question is to what extent, to what level, right? So obviously, if it's drugs, it's something we shouldn't be providing people, obviously, right? But because drugs are bad regardless of how little or how much you take, right? But when it comes to media, we see that there is a control factor that comes from the listener, because some people listen to it and they're not affected. Some people do. Some people listen to it and they are affected, right? And it's kind of about the control itself from the person. I also look at it kind of in terms of how much should you protect your children, right? Your children are going to be in the world, in the environment of the world. Are we going to put them in a bubble and never let them listen, never let them do anything else? Or do we allow them, do we teach them and help them so that they can handle it more than anything else? Because they're going to encounter it anyways, right? So looking from it so far, and I'm not going to make my decision from this right now, but so far it looks like most people are okay with it and they like it. And the person in Patreon also said the exact same thing. So this person he's like, I want to learn more what other people think. But this person also said, I just skip it. And I think that's okay too, right? Skipping it is fine. I know some people who jump straight to the question answer Thursdays. I know some people do that too. I know some people who go straight to the news. I know some people who listen to the first 30 minutes, right? It's really, really up to the listener. And so far, let's just see what other people say about this topic. And I'm really thankful for all of you guys out there. A lot of different responses about the song of choice. I am grateful that there is a response here, and I hope that everyone is learning more and more from each side, right? Like keeping in mind both sides. Like for instance, oh yeah, and what about this person, right? And what about this situation? And what about this? And we have to keep all of it in mind. I do think that I would have been, I think people would have been concerned if like I played more than one song, because most of my songs are either member artists, right? Member artists is my first section, and then the second section is praise and worship, right? And then it's the song of choice. So there's 6 songs that is like 3 songs of praise, 3 songs of member artists. So these are members making the music. And then the one song is from the world. So I do try to keep it to a minimum, because I do understand that it can be very, very influential. And I hope it's something that we can really understand too at a much, that, you know, I don't want to overdo it either. Yeah, that's why I only choose one song at the very end. But you know, if you guys have any other things that you want to anything else you want to add to this, I welcome you. I'm not going to make a decision this week. I'll probably make it by next week, and then you guys will know. Okay, awesome. So that is the thoughts of the week. Great question, great comment brought up by the member over there on Patreon. Hope you guys really, really enjoyed this time of thoughts of the week. Have an amazing and awesome Tuesday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign. Just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know. I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm